My mom Jackie has always had a complicated way of being my mother, if you could even call her that. She insists on being called Jackie, never Mom. She says it makes her feel old and trapped, as though the title would weigh her down. So my half-sister Leah and I grew up addressing her as if she were a neighbor or a friend, not our mother. It set a strange tone for our relationship from the start. Jackie was still in high school when she got pregnant with me. She often refers to my existence as an accident, a word that has lingered heavily in my mind for years, whether she realizes it or not. She and my biological father Avery were high school sweethearts, young, impulsive, and unprepared for what was to come. When Jackie told him she was pregnant, my dad made it clear he wasn't interested in being her partner. He promised to pay child support and be present in my life but drew a line at playing house or continuing their relationship. Jackie was devastated. She might not admit it, but I think she hoped the pregnancy would make things more serious between them, or even pull them closer together. Instead, my dad's decision shattered her expectations, and their relationship quickly deteriorated. After I was born, things only got worse between them. Jackie couldn't let go of her resentment, and it spilled out every time my dad came around. He'd show up to pick me up for visits or spend time with me, and Jackie would find reasons to argue. Sometimes it was over petty things and other times it was bigger issues, mostly tied to her frustration that he hadn't chosen to stay with her. As a child, I didn't understand the dynamics at play. When Jackie spoke poorly of my dad, I believed her. She'd say things like, "He doesn't love you enough to marry me," or, "Fathers are supposed to take care of their families, but your dad's just a deadbeat." I took her words at face value because I didn't know any better. But as I grew older, I started to see things differently. My dad wasn't the villain Jackie made him out to be. In fact, he was the opposite. He was consistent, showing up every weekend to visit me without fail. He was always on time, always eager to spend time with me, and never missed a child support payment. He genuinely cared about me and I could feel it. He wasn't perfect, but he was doing his best despite the circumstances. He was far from the deadbeat Jackie claimed he was. When I was 6, Jackie met Mike, the man who would later become her husband and, as she puts it, the love of her life. Watching her with Mike was surreal. It was like seeing a completely different version of her. Mike was laid back and kind, and from the beginning, he accepted me without hesitation. He treated me as his own, which meant a lot, especially given how distant Jackie could be. Mike wasn't the problem. He was steady and caring, and he tried to fill the gaps that Jackie often left. Not long after they got married, Jackie became pregnant again. When Leah was born, I was overjoyed. From the very beginning, I adored her, and over the years, our bond has only grown stronger. Leah isn't just my half-sister. She's my best friend, my confidant, and someone I'd do anything for. But as much as I love her, there's no denying that Jackie's treatment of the two of us has always been glaringly unequal. From the moment Leah arrived, it was obvious she was Jackie's favorite. Jackie doted on her in ways I could only dream of. She would light up around Leah, showering her with love, attention, and gifts. Every little whim of Leah's was met with enthusiasm. Pretty dresses with matching shoes, toys galore, and anything else her heart desired. Leah was Jackie's pride and joy, the apple of her eye. Meanwhile, I often felt like I was standing in Leah's shadow. Jackie's attitude toward me was distant, sometimes even cold. She rarely spent time with me, and when she did, it often felt like a chore. There was an unspoken tension, as though my very presence annoyed her. I tried to brush it off, but the favoritism was hard to ignore, and jealousy crept in despite how much I loved Leah. Watching Jackie pour all her warmth and affection into Leah, while I was left longing for even a fraction of it, hurt in ways I can't fully describe. It wasn't just about the material things Jackie lavished on Leah. It was the emotional connection, the care and love that Jackie reserved for her. While Leah received everything new and shiny, my requests for even small things like a dress or a toy were often dismissed or met with excuses. Sometimes Jackie would give me hand-me-downs from my cousin and tell me I didn't need anything new. Stop wasting money on unnecessary things, she'd say, brushing me off. The sting of her favoritism wasn't just about what I didn't get, it was about what Leah did. It made me feel like an outsider in my own family, like I didn't belong. I loved Leah unconditionally, but it hurt to watch Jackie treat her as if she were her only child. Jackie's favoritism was most obvious during birthdays. Every year, Leah's birthday was a grand celebration. Jackie would go all out with decorations, cakes, balloons, and a crowd of family and friends. The parties were extravagant, filled with excitement and love, showcasing how much Jackie adored Leah. My birthdays, on the other hand, were starkly different. They always felt like an afterthought. I wasn't allowed to invite friends over for a party, not once. Most years, Jackie would order a pizza, and that would be the extent of my birthday celebration. No cake, no decorations, no excitement, just a plain pizza delivery to mark the day. Watching the stark contrast between Leah's birthdays and mine felt like another reminder that I didn't matter as much to Jackie. As I got older, I started voicing my feelings, pointing out how unfair Jackie's behavior was. Instead of acknowledging my hurt or trying to make things right, she would lash out at me. "Go cry about it to your dad," she'd snap, deflecting responsibility. Jackie would blame my dad for everything, saying, "This is all his fault," as if her favoritism had anything to do with him. It was her way of avoiding accountability for the way she treated me. My dad, however, always tried to make up for it in his own way. He knew how much birthdays meant to me and how special they should feel. Without fail, he was always the first to call me at midnight to wish me a happy birthday. He'd try to make up for Jackie's lack of effort in small but meaningful ways. And while it didn't erase the pain, it reminded me that someone cared. She'd comment on his pictures, send him messages about random things, and even tag him in posts that seemed irrelevant. It wasn't over the top, but it was just enough to make me uncomfortable. Lon didn't think much of it and assured me it was probably just her way of being friendly. Still, something about it didn't sit right with me. As time went on, things between Lon and me started to change. The spark we had in the beginning began to fade, and we both realized that while we cared deeply for each other, we weren't right as a couple. Breaking up was a mutual decision, and though it hurt, we ended things on good terms. There was no drama, no bitterness, just an understanding that we were better off apart. I moved on, focusing on my career and my future. A couple of years later, I met Ethan, the man who would become my husband. Ethan was everything I could have ever asked for, kind, supportive, and genuinely in love with me for who I was. He brought out the best in me, and being with him felt like the easiest thing in the world. When Ethan proposed, I was over the moon. We began planning our wedding and preparing for our future together. Shortly after we got engaged, we found out I was pregnant, and the joy we felt was indescribable. We decided to hold a small baby shower to celebrate with close friends and family before the wedding. And that's when Jackie decided to pull one of the most bizarre and hurtful stunts of her life. At first, Jackie seemed genuinely happy for me. She even offered to help plan the baby shower, which shocked me because it was so unlike her to take an active interest in anything related to me. But I didn't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, so I accepted her offer, hoping that maybe this was her way of trying to repair our strained relationship. As the baby shower approached, Jackie seemed unusually involved. She was constantly calling to ask about the guest list, the decorations, and the menu. It was strange, but I chalked it up to her wanting to be part of something big in my life for once. I had no idea what she was really planning. The day of the baby shower arrived, and everything seemed perfect. Ethan and I were surrounded by our loved ones, celebrating the upcoming arrival of our little one. The atmosphere was warm and full of love, until Jackie showed up. When Jackie walked in, I noticed she wasn't alone. At first, I assumed she had brought a friend or a relative I hadn't seen in a while, but when I turned to greet her, my heart stopped. Standing next to her was Lon, my ex-boyfriend. My mind raced. Why was Lon here? Who had invited him? Surely it couldn't have been Ethan. He barely knew Lon, and even if he did, he wouldn't have done something so thoughtless. That left only one possibility: Jackie. I confronted her immediately, asking why she had brought my ex to my baby shower. Jackie feigned innocence, claiming she thought it would be nice to invite Lon since they had kept in touch over the years. "I didn't think it would be a big deal," she said with a shrug, as if her actions weren't completely inappropriate. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was my baby shower, a day to celebrate the new life Ethan and I were bringing into the world, and she had turned it into her own little drama. Lon, to his credit, looked just as uncomfortable as I felt. He apologized for showing up, explaining that Jackie had insisted he come and made it sound like I would be thrilled to see him. I told him it wasn't his fault, but I was livid with Jackie. How could she think this was okay? Jackie, of course, didn't see what the problem was. In fact, she had the audacity to tell me that she was trying to save me from my marriage. She claimed she didn't think Ethan was right for me, and that she wanted to remind me of what I could have had with Lon. You two were perfect together, she said, as if that justified her actions. I just don't want you to settle. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't about me or my happiness. It was about her need to control my life, to undermine the joy I had found with Ethan. I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak, and for the first time in my life, I realized that Jackie wasn't just neglectful. She was toxic. Jackie maintained her usual demeanor, cool and detached. While other guests beamed with joy and celebrated with us, Jackie sat at the back, looking like she was attending out of obligation rather than any genuine excitement. I tried not to let it bother me. After all, it was my day, and I wasn't about to let her attitude ruin it. Phil and I were starting a new life together, and that was all that mattered. After the wedding, things moved quickly. With the baby on the way, Phil and I threw ourselves into preparing for parenthood. We attended birthing classes, decorated the nursery, and read every book we could find on raising a child. It was an exciting and nerve-wracking time, but we felt ready to face it together. When it came time to plan the baby shower, Jackie offered to help. First, I was skeptical. Jackie and I didn't exactly have a track record of positive collaborations, and I was worried her involvement might lead to unnecessary stress. But Leah encouraged me to let her be part of it, saying it might be Jackie's way of trying to bridge the gap between us. Reluctantly, I agreed. To my surprise, Jackie seemed genuinely invested in the planning process. She called me almost daily to discuss details about the guest list, decorations, and menu. At one point, I even thought that maybe this was her way of finally showing she cared. But as the day of the baby shower drew closer, I started to sense that something was off. Jackie was being unusually secretive about certain aspects of the event. Whenever I asked for updates, she brushed me off, saying, "Don't worry about it. It's a surprise." I didn't push too hard. I was busy with work and appointments, and honestly, part of me wanted to believe that Jackie had finally turned a corner and was making an effort to mend our relationship. The day of the baby shower arrived, and everything seemed perfect at first. The decorations were beautiful, the food was delicious, and I was surrounded by friends and family who were all there to celebrate this new chapter in my life. For a brief moment, I let my guard down and allowed myself to enjoy the day. That was until Jackie walked in, arm in arm with someone I never expected to see, Lon. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jackie wasn't just dismissing my happiness. She was making my pregnancy, one of the most joyous milestones of my life, all about her and her image. I felt a surge of anger like I'd never experienced before. For years, I had endured her passive-aggressive comments, her blatant favoritism toward Leah, and her constant need to belittle my accomplishments. But this was a new low even for her. "You really think this is about you?" I asked her, trying to keep my voice steady, though I was seething inside. "This is my life, my child, and my happiness. You don't get to make this about your reputation." Jackie blinked at me, clearly taken aback by my directness. It was probably the first time I'd ever stood up to her like that. But I didn't stop there. "All my life, you've made me feel like I wasn't enough," I continued. "You've put me down, ignored me, and made it clear that Leah was your favorite. And now, when I'm finally happy and starting my own family, you can't even support me without making it about yourself. Well, guess what? I'm done letting you ruin my moments. You don't get to take this away from me." For a moment, Jackie just stared at me, her expression unreadable. Then, without another word, she turned on her heel and left the room. I stood there, shaking with adrenaline and a mixture of anger and relief. I had finally said everything I had been holding inside for years. When I told Phil what had happened, he immediately wrapped me in his arms, assuring me that I'd done the right thing. "She's never going to change," he said gently, "but you don't have to let her control how you feel anymore." Leah, who overheard some of the conversation, was equally supportive. She hugged me tightly and apologized for Jackie's behavior, even though it wasn't her fault. "She's wrong, you know," Leah said. "You're going to be an amazing mom, and this baby is lucky to have you." Those words meant more to me than I could express. Leah had always been caught in the middle of Jackie's favoritism, but she'd never let it affect our bond. Knowing she had my back gave me the strength to move forward with confidence. As the weeks went by, I focused on preparing for the arrival of our baby. Jackie's negativity lingered in my mind at times, but I was determined not to let it overshadow the excitement and love that surrounded this new chapter in my life. I had Phil, Leah, Mike, and my dad by my side, and that was more than enough. But little did I know Jackie wasn't done causing drama yet. I stood there, frozen, as Lon continued to speak. The sheer absurdity of the situation was almost too much to process. At my own baby shower, a day meant to celebrate the upcoming arrival of my child, my mom had managed to turn everything into a bizarre and humiliating spectacle. Lon, looking more uncomfortable by the second, explained how Jackie had been bombarding him with messages for weeks. She'd painted a picture of my life as one big mistake, a rushed marriage and an ill-timed pregnancy that she was determined to rescue me from. He said she had begged him to come to the baby shower, claiming he was my true soulmate and the only one who could save me from what she believed was a disastrous path. I didn't want to come, Lon said, his voice apologetic but firm. But your mom wouldn't stop. She insisted I needed to show up and fix things. I'm sorry for showing up like this, but I thought you needed to know what she's been doing. I glanced around the room, my friends and family watching in stunned silence, their faces filled with shock and second-hand embarrassment. Leah and Mike looked horrified, clearly unsure of how to respond to the chaos unfolding in front of them. Phil, my husband, had gone pale. I could see the hurt and confusion in his eyes as he processed what was happening. Jackie, on the other hand, seemed unfazed by Lan's words. If anything, she looked annoyed. Lon, don't make it sound like I did something wrong, she said, her voice taking on a defensive tone. I was only trying to help. You know she's making a mistake. Phil isn't right for her. That was the breaking point for me. My body felt like it was buzzing with adrenaline and fury as I turned to face her. Are you serious, Jackie? I said, my voice shaking but loud enough to command the room's attention. This is my life. My child. My marriage. Who the hell do you think you are, deciding who is or isn't right for me? Jackie's mouth opened, but I didn't give her the chance to speak. You've done nothing but tear me down my entire life. You've questioned every decision I've made, belittled my happiness, and now you've gone so far as to bring my ex to my baby shower to humiliate me? What is wrong with you? Her face turned red, whether from embarrassment or anger, I didn't know nor did I care. I wasn't trying to humiliate you, she snapped. I was trying to save you from making a mistake. Well, guess what? I shot back. The only mistake I've ever made was letting you think you had any say in my life. This is the last straw, Jackie. You're done. You're not going to see me, my husband, or my child ever again. The room was silent, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. Jackie's eyes widened, but she didn't respond. For once, she had nothing to say. Phil stepped forward then, placing a protective hand on my shoulder. We're leaving, he said firmly, his voice cutting through the tension. This day was supposed to be about celebrating our baby, not dealing with this nonsense. Leah and Mike quickly stepped in to help gather our things, glaring at Jackie as they did. The guests, still reeling from what had just happened, murmured quietly among themselves. Lon, looking both apologetic and relieved to be leaving, muttered another apology as he slipped out the door. I'm really sorry, he said again before disappearing into the night. As Phil and I walked out, I felt an overwhelming mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, and relief all at once. Jackie had crossed the line for the last time, and while it hurt to cut ties with her, I knew it was the right decision for my family. Lan's words hung heavy in the room, each one landing like a hammer blow. My mom, Jackie, stood there, her face a deep shade of red as the weight of her actions was exposed for everyone to see. For once she was speechless. No sharp retorts, no deflections, just silence. The tension in the room was almost palpable, with everyone staring at her, their disbelief and disappointment written plainly across their faces. Lon turned to me once more, his tone softer now. I'm sorry for crashing your baby shower, he said, sincerity clear in his voice. I didn't want to come, but I felt it was important to tell you the truth. You deserve better than this, and I hope this doesn't ruin what should be a joyful time for you. Despite the awkwardness of the situation, I felt a wave of gratitude for his honesty. Thank you, I said, managing a small smile as he handed me a gift he had brought for the baby. It was a kind gesture, and though the moment was far from ideal, I appreciated the thoughtfulness behind it. As Lon left, the room was plunged into an uncomfortable silence. All eyes turned back to Jackie, who looked like she wished the floor would open up and swallow her whole. She glanced around, her lips trembling as if she might say something, but no words came. For a moment I felt a pang of pity for her, but it was quickly overshadowed by the anger and hurt I felt. This wasn't just a petty slight or a moment of poor judgment. This was calculated, malicious, and deeply hurtful. Jackie had tried to sabotage one of the most important moments of my life, and for what? To satisfy her own insecurities and jealousy? It was unforgivable. After the party, Leah and I agreed that we couldn't continue to let Jackie be a part of our lives. Her actions had crossed a line, and it was clear that she wasn't capable of change. My dad and Mike were equally appalled. My dad made it clear that Jackie was to stay away from me and my family, and Mike confronted her directly, demanding answers. Instead of apologizing, Jackie doubled down, trying to justify her behavior and refusing to take responsibility for her actions. Mike, who had always been a steady and supportive figure in my life, finally reached his breaking point. He realized that if Jackie could treat her own daughter with such malice, there was no guarantee she wouldn't do the same to him or anyone else she claimed to care about. He decided to separate from her, understanding that her selfishness and toxicity were things he couldn't continue to tolerate in his life. 8 months later, life looks much brighter. Phil and I are thriving as new parents, and our baby is healthy and happy. Leah, my dad, and Mike have become a strong support system for us, visiting often and making sure we're never short on love or laughter. The bond I've built with them feels unshakable, and I'm grateful every day for their presence in my life. As for Jackie, none of us have had any contact with her since that day. From what I've heard through the grapevine, the rest of the family has distanced themselves from her as well. It seems that her actions at the baby shower were the final straw for everyone. Looking back, it's still hard to comprehend the lengths Jackie went to in her attempts to sabotage my happiness. But in the end, her actions only brought those who truly love and care for me closer together. I've built a life filled with love, support, and positivity, and while the pain of her betrayal still lingers, I know that cutting her out was the best decision for me and my family. Phil, Leah, and I are focused on the future now, one where Jackie is nothing more than a distant memory. For the first time in a long time, I feel truly at peace.